Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show. These are the Royal Ascot previews and this is day one of Royal Ascot, the Tuesday. And I'm your host, George Elek, and I'm joined by two expert guests to run through the card at Ascot. Oddschecker's very own tipster, Andy Holding. And joining us is Johnny Ward as well from a holiday cabin, I think it's fair to say.
Indeed. It turns out we were basically both watching the National in the last week and I just continued to party and you went home.
Yeah, well, I continued the party too long in Belfast after the gig, I must say. I'm feeling fresher today after heading to the night that is called supposedly Belfast's premier student night. And I think I learnt that I should not be going to student nights anymore. But there we have it. Andy, when was the last time you went clubbing?
It's been a while, although I've got a bit of an insight into how raucous those Irish student nights might be, given the racket they tend to make at places like Limerick on a Tuesday afternoon. If the decibel levels go up fairly sharply, anyway, put it that way.
That's when I knew I was getting old, was when the idea of going to a student day at the races became my idea of going to Animal Bay, basically, as opposed to something to enjoy. Yeah. So yeah, there we go.
I found it very funny on Tuesday night when I found out that the club where this student night is held at, the name of the club is Filthy McNasties. This just seems a bit much, but maybe we'll have the Oddschecker betting show Christmas party at Filthy McNasties in Belfast at the end of the year.
Absolutely. It'd be a good name for some of the each way thievery we're going to hopefully put up today as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds like a horse, to be fair. Anyway, we digress. We should talk about the racing, which is coming at you from Ascot next week. I can't wait. I'm going to be there on Tuesday. Very excited for it as ever. Andy, I feel like we could probably take your answer from these podcasts we do every year and repeat it, but I'm going to ask you again because I know you have sage advice when it comes to betting at Royal Ascot, when it comes to betting at Ascot generally, and that is looking out for that Ascot form.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of put in the usual caveats before we start. Number one sort of priority that you need to look at is Ascot form. It's just worth its weight in gold. It's been proven and tested over the years. Horses that come here for the first time often get a culture shock. I just think it's more to do with the rhythm of the races and the way the races pan out here. I try and avoid front runners like the plague, particularly on the round track. It's very, very difficult to make all the running. You usually get gobbled up in the home straight by horses finishing wide. And you don't get many that make all the running on the straight track either. Obviously, there are the odd exception. You know, you look back and there has been, like Ostilio, for instance, made all the running when he won the Britannia. Think of Amanda Perrett's made all the running when it won the Royal Hunt Cup. But they're probably on extremes of ground. But by and large, you want to be on hold-up horses that finish their races off quite nicely. So even though there are horses that have done good numbers, if they haven't got the run style to coincide with how Ascot should be run, then I tend to look for the horses that are just slightly below them, but they have got that. They do come up. They're like deep closers. So those would be my two golden rules. Back in Ascot horses, they've got course and distance form preferably, and back hold up horses on the straight and the round track.
Johnny, how's your Ascot form normally? Is this a meeting you tend to be profitable with? Is it a meeting you enjoy?
I do. I love Ascot actually, and it's. I know you're going next week. It's definitely something I want to experience at some stage because
it's busy.
Funny, I was on a radio show with Michael O'Callaghan the other day, and we've gotten into the habit of doing the radio show remotely, so Zoom calls. But on this occasion, he was actually in Dublin, and I was like, "Oh, what are you doing in Dublin?" He was getting his suit for Royal Ascot, and I was saying, I mean, is it not the case that you put all this effort into looking so well, and then after 20 minutes, everyone is just partying? And he said pretty much, yeah. But he looked well anyway, and he has an actually fancy for the Commonwealth Cup he has running later in the week as well, which we'll probably get to in our next podcast.
Yeah, exactly. That's a reason. Even if you don't enjoy this Tuesday podcast, go and listen to the Wednesday one that we're going to record afterwards, just for that little nugget there. And Andy, before we get into the racing, as is always the case, the going is incredibly important. I am geographically, at least, the closest to Ascot right now, and it hasn't rained very much, although I have been in Belfast previously where it was definitely raining, but the forecast is set pretty fair. So is it fair to assume that we're not going to see much soft in the going when it gets to next week?
Yeah, which is good, really. I mean, it's good and bad in some quarters, because If you're a fan of Trusham, for instance, then you're probably not going to get to see him once again at his very best. I remember we did the
or at
podcast
all,
on
maybe.
this. Or at all, yeah, exactly. I remember we did the podcast last year. We were predicting rain on the eve of Gold Cup Day, and of course it didn't come until after Gold Cup Day. So the Friday and the Saturday were run on soft ground, whereas unfortunately Trusham didn't get a chance to show his true worth in the Gold Cup with the biggest race of the week. But yeah, the forecast up until certainly mid part of the week anyway, as far as I can see, looking on the weather maps, is for a fairly dry period with a lot of high pressure and a lot of sunshine. So currently good. They've had the rain, but I think that'll probably evaporate quite quickly. And, you might have to turn the taps on at some stage just to keep the uniformity through the week.
I might get a bit hot in my top hat on Tuesday. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, what it's going to be like. Yeah,
whatever the weather is like.
Yeah, I know. And I'll also look like a fool no matter what the weather is like either. Let's get into the racing now. Then this is the Tuesday preview, so we're going to go through the card, all 7 races on Tuesday from Ascot. And before we do get stuck into the previews themselves and get the guys' tips, do download the oddschecker app for the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and of course Andy's Ascot column straight to the app. Normally it's every morning of racing, but sometimes he treats us with the night before. I'm not sure what the guys have organised with you at the moment, so we'll have to wait and see. But do download the oddschecker app so you can get all of that straight to your phone ahead of the week's racing. We're going to kick off then with the Queen Anne, of course, the first race on the Tuesday, over a mile. And well, I mean, is it a good betting heat or is it a procession? Baaeed is the 2-7 favourite ahead of Aldari at 8-1. Real World also 8-1. Chindit 14s. Order of Australia 16s. Mura 25s. Lights On 25s. Accidental Agent 33-1. 50-1 Happy Power. 50-1 Sabuska. We are recording this early afternoon on Thursday, so Tuesday wise we should be okay. A couple will come out, you'd have thought, a couple of days before, and the prices will change, of course, but this is where we are at the moment. And Andy, let's talk about Baaeed. We saw some pretty special horses last weekend at Epsom. Desert Crown looks to be a bit of a superstar, both the first and the second in Tuesday, and Emily Upjohn doing their reputation no harm at all in the Oaks. But in Baaeed, you have another horse here that looks like he could be an absolute superstar. Yeah,
it's really ironic, but we'd only seen him the once, hadn't we? At this time last year, I think he made his debut in the first month of June, and I remember doing the numbers for him that day and highlighting to my subscribers that this fella could be pretty good. Little did I know that 4 or 5 runs later he was going to be Group 1 standard. I actually managed only to back him twice as well, which I should have made more money out of him, really. But anyway,
when you think
nevertheless,
SPs have been 6-1 on debut, then 4-6, 10-11, 2-5, 2-on, 2s, 4-9. I don't think you've done yourself out of too much.
No. I think the day he won second time, when he was 10-11. I think there was a bit of sort of 7-4, 6-4 in the morning. I think that's the best I got on him. But yeah, he's obviously been catching the eye of everyone. He's just been incredibly flashy in his wins. His time figures are good, and he just seems to be improving with every single run. His performance when he won the Lockings was as good as we thought it might be for a horse having his seasonal debut. And I think it's more lack of opposition in this category at the moment, which it makes him stand out from the crowd. I mean, we haven't got any horses, or the main sort of horses, wanting to take him on just yet. Obviously the 3-year-olds might have something to say later on in the season, but when he's taking on the older horses, there isn't that many around. I mean, you're looking at Real World as his only real danger, and he pushed him aside quite readily in the Lockings. I think Real World will be in the frame, and I think the fact that Godolphin are only running him, and they're not going to run Master of the Seas, who was nominated as this race after he won at Newmarket, I think tells you all you need to know. I think Real World will certainly acquit himself well, because he likes the track, as he proved when he won the Royal Hunt Cup. But Aldari, I think, will sidestep the meeting, probably more on ground front than anything else. And then you're looking at the likes of Chindit and even Accidental Angel, really, to roll back the ears and run in the frame. I think if you are going to have a bet in this race, you're backing something each way, you're not necessarily going to be looking at, oh yes, I'm definitely looking at the win part of the bet. The only angle you can have is if you had a bet now on something each way and put it in some each way multiples, is hope that there are less than 8 runners on the day, which potentially there could be. A lot depends which one Aidan runs out of Order of Australia or Mother Earth, or even what Sir Michael Stout does with Lights On, because she's 20 to 1 to win this race, yet she's only 5 to 1 to win the Duke of Cambridge later on in the week. So it makes sense for her to go there and not take on Baaeed. So if you take Aldari, one of Aiden's out, and Lights On out, we're only left with 7. So I think that's the quandary that you've got as a punter. If you are having an each way bet, you should really do it now if you're going to have one. But you're only really playing for the places rather than genuinely feel as though you're going to beat Baaeed, because he'll probably win. There'll be 2 processions on day one. The Royal procession first, and then this one, and then this one afterwards.
And if you were going to have that each way bet, I mean, who would be the one? You mentioned Real World there, 8 to 1. So probably a short enough price for an each way single where you're really going to be, nicking a couple of pennies rather than anything else. But
that's it.
Chindit 14 to 1 and Accidental Agent 33 to 1.
I think Accidental Angel could be the one that just might pick up some scraps. For instance, if, let's say, in the perfect utopia on the day, there are 8 runners, and there will be 1 or 2 firms that will be going 4 places, I guarantee it. He'll be ridden right out the back. He'll be ridden to finish off his race, as he often does. And he's actually proven himself this season as good as ever. I know the ratings will say that he's got a mountain to climb, but he probably hasn't got that much to find with the likes of Real World, Tabuska and Chindit, if you take Baaeed out of the equation. I mean, he charged home the other day in the Victoria Cup over a distance that was too short for him. So he loves it here at Ascot. He's got a bundle load of Ascot form. And as I said, he'll be finishing off his race to good effect. So he could easily sneak into 3rd or 4th. So we'll just see how many runners we get before we do any big decision making.
And Accidental Agent, winner of the race, back in 2018 as well?
Yep.
A fair while ago, but maybe worth chancing at a big price. And as Andy says, if a few do come out and there are 7 runners, most firms will be going 2 places. But if you have your bet now before final decks, you would, of course, keep your 3. So that's why it could be worth playing before some of those do come out. Johnny, how do you see this going? Is there any way we can get Baaeed beat, or is it basically playing for second?
No, I can't see how he's beaten. I don't think Mother Earth will go in this. I think she'll go on Wednesday. And as Andy says, it might cut up into like a 7-horse race. But for a horse by Sea the Stars out of a King Mambo mare, and I think Kevin Blake has spoken about this cross on Twitter. He's unbelievably fast. Like, he really is bred for a good bit further. And it'll be fascinating to see him as a stallion, because he as a Sea the Stars horse, he's so much speed, and he was. For all that he didn't run until he was 3, he was quickly developed into a very good horse, and I thought he was absolutely spectacular on his comeback run. Mother Earth, as I mentioned, I think she'll be ridden differently when she runs later on in the week. She was ridden prominently and faded. I don't think she's going to run here, but he was just spectacular, and he just goes through the motions in these races. He's very uncomplicated to ride, obviously. And as Andy mentions, if you're following Ascot form, he has Ascot form, and this is a no-bet race for me. Just watch and enjoy Baaeed. And if it's a good start to the week in terms of, I think, just a spectacular racehorse, the best miler around.
The best miler around, 2 to 7. Can't pick a hole in Baaeed at all in the opener, the Queen Anne, on Tuesday at Ascot. So we'll move on to the Coventry, and this looks to me to be an absolutely stellar Coventry. I'm excited to hear what Andy has to say about these 2 at the top of the market, because I know they've stacked their speed figures, have stacked up pretty well. Noble Style 3 to 1 favourite, Persian Force 7 to 2, then Blackbeard 4 to 1, Little Big Bear 8 to 1, Age of Kings 10 to 1, Royal Scotsman 12 to 1, Bradsell 12 to 1. 16 to 1 bar. And Andy, I remember back a couple of months ago now, after Persian Force's win in the first flat race of the season at the Brocklesby, you messaged me saying that horse is a freak and to basically get on for Ascot. But then just a few weeks later, Noble Style does what Noble Style did as well. So where do you have these 2 in terms of your speed figures as it stands?
They're virtually inseparable. We've got basically a 94 for Persian Force, which is well above average for this time of year. For instance, last season we got 1 horse running a 94, 2-year-old wise this is, and that was Native Trail when he won the National Stakes. Nothing else surpassed that, even in the Dewhurst, etc. So we're dealing with an above average type of horse, as I said, pre-Royal Ascot. You don't normally get horses as quick as this, so I think I'm quite right to say that Persian Force and Noble Style are freaks, because as I said, 94 and 93 respectively. The one plus thing that we've got about Noble Style over Persian Force is that he did his 93 at Ascot, albeit over 5 furlongs, but he was very strong at the finish. His back end sectionals are really good, and we've already seen that race work out incredibly well, as anticipated. When you get such a high time figure, particularly 2-year-olds, you like to think the form will work out really well. So you look back and you see Wellbank, what he's done subsequently. Went to York and won by 8 lengths. Redemption Time, he's won since. Even the thing of Paul and Oliver Coles, who finished 4th, Royal Scotsman, was
Royal
devastating
Scotsman.
next time out. So it's got plenty of depth to back up the numbers. So it's probably advantage Noble style in the sense that he's going to come forward a huge amount from his first run. And he's got Ascot form as well. He's got that run style as well, which will be suited to the track. The only niggle I've got is with Noble style. I haven't actually backed him as yet. I'd rather crazily missed him off my list. I've had a few bets for Royal Ascot, but somehow I managed to miss him and he slipped through the net. But I have backed Persian Force. I backed him, I think, a week after he won the Bucklesby for both races. And the pretense that I thought, well, I'm going to lose one, but I know I'm going to be on the right price at the right one for the right race, whichever way he ends up with. And of course, the 6 furlong win last time out at Newby meant that they were going to go down the Coventry route. So they stand out like an absolute country mile from the rest. They are priced up accordingly. One's 11-4, the other one's 3.
Do you have a Blackbeard well behind them?
Yeah, bizarrely, even though he won the Marble Hill, his time figure was an 83, which is well below the UK horses. In fact, we haven't got too many Irish horses running anywhere near a 90. There's only one that's gone over 90 and a few sort of 89s, 88s. But generally speaking, for some reason, the Irish races just haven't been strongly run ones. We've had good winners, and there's been quite a lot of all of them. You know, Statuaire, Little Big Bear, and this one we're talking about here, the Antarctic and Blackbeard as well. So they're a good bunch, but as of yet, they just haven't been in the right race to drag that speed figure up to the likes of Persian Force and Noble Style. So it's hard for me to back a Blackbeard, knowing that he's got to improve a huge amount, in my opinion, to beat the other two. I think if I was going to nominate one at a big price that has done a big number that might be underestimated, it's Rousing Encore from Richard Fahey's stable. He beat a filly of John Quinn's, Breege, who was very good on the numbers first time out at Wetherby. She beat a horse called Commander Straker, who went on to win next time out at Bath in very easy fashion. And they were devastated he got beat the other day. She got beat at Pontefract. She went off 3 on, and this thing blew it out of the water completely. Did a really big number. So he hasn't got that much to find, Rousing Encore. I think he's quite a smart horse. But I back Persian Force, so I'm stuck with him. I might back Noble Style on the day as a cover bet, but I'd expect one of those two to win, certainly based on the time figures.
Rousing Encore, best price 20-1. Can I ask you? I'll ask Johnny for his thoughts. But in the meantime, can you find me what number Scholarship did for Clive Cox on debut?
83, 84, something like that.
Okay, interesting. Not good enough.
I can
Johnny?
literally go down the whole list and tell you exactly what they've done, but that would just bore everyone senseless.
Well, I mean, it'd probably be quite handy, but I agree, it doesn't make for the best audio and video content. Johnny, how do you see the Coventry?
I think it's one of the races of the meet, to be honest. I'm just looking at Aidan O'Brien's stats for his 2-year-olds on turf this year, 52%. He's been incredibly good with his 2-year-olds, and a lot of them, obviously, they're kind of bred by the likes of No Nay Never, like you have here, some other new stallions that he has as well. Not so many Galileo horses running yet, so he has the sort of flashier types like Age of Kings, who's by Kingman. Blackbird has done nothing wrong, but I really like Little Big Bear, and I think he's a certainty to improve for the trip. I suppose the way Andy was talking, his speed figure probably wasn't great at Nace, but he way more in hand than looked the case at the time. He basically cruised through the race. He was backed as if to fuse out the question. He's a certainty to improve for another furlong, and he just travels like a very good horse. He's he's built just to improve with time. I'm interested as well that Lexus Orba, who was second, Joseph O'Brien thinks a lot of. He was actually behind Blackbeard, but got closer to him the time before. And Little Big Bear is an each way price here for a trainer who's won 3 of the last 10 renewals, give or take. As I say, he's built to improve. Fine big horse, travels so strongly in these races, and I think there's definitely more there. I like the way he did the second time compared to the first time, and I think what you say he's 8-1, so he would definitely do for me each way. I'm not guaranteed he's going to be ridden by Ryan Moore or whatever, but I think he'd run a big race one way or the other.
He's done 2 really good numbers, actually, very solid, 85, 86. So he's up there with the very best of the Irish, with more to come. Do you think Johnny he'll split the two apart? I know he's got all the horses to run in the Windsor Castle and the Norfolk. But do you think one of these will stay over 5 and one of them will represent him in the 6 furlong race?
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I don't think dropping back to 5 furlongs would be really an issue, or 5 furlongs would be an issue for him. Blackbeard as well looked very pacey at the Curragh the last time. That is a slight concern about these. Aidan and Joseph as well have a lot of horses double entered, so I'm kind of hoping a little bit. I think he did say sort of after an ace that this is likely where he'd go, but I wouldn't be entirely up to speed with plans. But I hope he goes here anyway. You could obviously see them split.
Little Big Bear 8-1, best price with William Hill, as short as 6-1 elsewhere. The one there for Johnny, with the caveat that Blackbeard and Little Big Bear, both for Ed and O'Brien, might not both be taking up their entries here come the day. And Andy, you also had, not to give the secrets away, but you had a decent figure for the horse that Persian Force beat second time, didn't you? In Andrew Balding's Holguin, is that right?
Yeah, Holgoon did an 88 first time out, but Persian Force, just toyed with him, didn't he, at Newbury? I mean, the Newbury figure wasn't anything because they just didn't go a gallop, but it proved that Persian Force has got a bit of everything. If the pace is strong from start to finish, he can cruise and he can sit and he can pounce and he can quicken. And if they go slow, he's got the turn of foot as well. He's just a very, very good horse. I think Richard Hanna's been on record, said he's the best he's ever had at this stage. And, he's had Canford Cliffs and a lot of really good horses that come here to Royal Ascot, but I don't think he's got one as better as this. Certainly as I've seen. Like I say, just a freakish time figure that first time. I literally could not believe what he'd done. It was almost like, mind numbing it was. So yeah, let's see how good he is.
So at the prices right now, Noble Style or Persian Force, who'd you be siding with 3-1, 7-2?
I'd probably go. I'm not going to contradict myself, but I'd probably go Noble Style at the prices at the moment because I've already backed the other one, so I'm kind of like leaning towards Noble Style at the prices. Plus, like I said, the fact that he's got Ascot form in the bag. Look, they're both very good. It's just almost impossible to split them. They're just so far ahead of the rest that I'll be amazed unless the draw plays havoc with one of them. Like say there's a maximum field of 20, one's drawn 1 and he gets drawn on the wrong side. But if there's no draw bias and they're actually kind of like racing next to each other where the speed is, I'll be surprised if one of them doesn't win.
Have you ever put up a reverse forecast in your column before?
No, never.
No. First time for everything, Andy.
First time for everything, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
We'll move on to the third race on the card. It is the King's Stand, and Golden Pal is the 9-4 favourite ahead of Nature Strip at 3-1. Twilight Calls 9-1, Man of Promise, and King's Lynn both 14-1. Muniesta 16-1, 20-1. Pontos and Kadeem and Winter Power as well 25-1. Bar those, and we've seen Golden Pal come over this way twice. Was beaten, touched off by the Learjet a couple of years ago back in 2020, and then didn't run a great race at all at York, finishing 5 lengths behind Winter Power in the Witten Bassett, in the Nunthorpe. Johnny, we'll come to you first here, and then of course the second in is the Australian horse making its first Ascot appearance. And these races, I guess, are quite difficult to call when you've got the only UK form effectively getting 9-1 or bigger.
Yeah, just so much prestige to it. It's great to see. We don't see that much where you have these horses come over, and Wesley Ward just loves Royal Ascot. As Andy says, it's hard to make the run in here, and obviously his record when he comes over is okay. It's patchy, so. I wouldn't be backing him at 9-4. I mean, I'm not going to lie. This isn't a race I'd be getting involved in. I'm not sure I can compare the form of one continent to the other. But Muniesta, she's been a hell of a servant for connections, and she just keeps running so well. And I think the really strong pace she'll be able to lie up and really strong over this trip in the closing stages, probably more so than 6 furlongs. I think she'll run well, but it's definitely not a race I'd be getting heavily involved in. Andy probably would have a better idea.
Muniesta 16-1, as I say. Andy?
Yeah, potentially this is one of my better betting races of the day. Just based on the fact I think the market has gone Doolally over the front two in the market. I mean, Golden Pal has just got the run style that you just not want anything to do with at Ascot. I mean, Batash was good enough to get away with it once, but he got found out a couple of times at Ascot when he went too fast. You just don't see the trip out, and to my eyes, Golden Pal is all speed, and of course, Wesley Ward's going to come out and say he's the fastest horse he's ever. Of course he is, because he runs on flat tracks in America, where a place like Keeneland, you can just get away and you're gone. But Ascot's a different ball game. He couldn't get away with them at York, and that's the flattest track that we've got in the Nunthorpe. So I mean, I think Ascot will just eat him alive. He wouldn't be for me at 2-1. He wouldn't be for me at any price, to be perfectly honest. Nature Strip's a difficult one to quantify as well. I mean, he's got obviously he hasn't run outside of his native land, so I'm not sure what he's going to do faced with a stiff uphill climb for 2 furlongs. And it's hard to pull, like I say, a number on him. I've got at least with Golden Pal, I've seen him run and got some figures, so you know roughly where you are with him, but you don't know how good or not so good Nature Strip is. You're just going on again hype, and because he's an Australian horse, there's that sort of like mystique surrounding him, like it was the good mare that won here, 4 or 5 years ago.
20 wins and 37 starts is a decent record for
absolutely. Look, total respect to him. I've seen his videos and I've watched how he goes about his work. He's good, but he's just impossible to put a figure on and know how good he is compared to the UK horses. So I'm just going to completely bet this race as if they don't exist, and just concentrate on what I do know. And what I do know is that there are 2 horses in this race who've both got good Ascot form, that come out really well on the numbers, and are hold-up horses that like a strong pace. And I think one of them will definitely be there or thereabouts at the finish. So I'll probably have 2 each-way bets here. One of them is Moonista, the horse that Johnny's mentioned. I've got a massive amount of time for Jack Davison and this mare, the way he's campaigned it. If you stop the video a furlong out in last year's Commonwealth Cup, and you didn't know anything else, you'd say, oh, the horse in the green wins. She was literally running away, but stiff 6 furlongs on heavy ground, as it turned out. She just got found out. Plus the fact she was drawn 1. If you go back and look at the draw last year, the first 5 home were all drawn high, near side high. She had to use up a lot of petrol from stall 1 just to even get competitive. So the fact that she got there swinging just tells you how good she is. And 3 runs this season, she ran over 6 furlongs first time out behind Power Under Me. Again, the draw beater. Probably needed the run as well, over 6. She then got drawn the wrong side in a 7-runner race at Naas, where Geocentric and Romantic Proposer were drawn 1 and 2, and they raced on the far side rail. And unfortunately, Oshinor decided to track the other 4 down the near side. It was only in the last 100 yards he suddenly thought, "Oh, damn it, I'm in the wrong place here." But the die was cast, and then he ran last time out in the Greenlands, which is the best 6 furlong Irish race, certainly in the early part of the season. He got beat by Brad the Brief, but he battered a case. So she battered a Case of You. Was obviously an Abbey winner, 4 lengths back in 3rd. Again, she travelled like the wrath of God. She just didn't quite see it out over 6, but she's all about speed. 5 furlongs when they go 1,000,000 is going to suit her down to the ground. If she gets drawn well in and around the speed, and there's plenty of speed, obviously, with Golden Pal, that it'll just be ideal. She'll just sitting behind, and because she stays further and she's got Ascot form as well over further, I can see her running a huge race and certainly outrunning her odds. And the other one is Kings Lynn, who should have won this race last year. He was coming with a withering run up the stand rail, but unfortunately he ran it into traffic problems. And he ended up finishing 7th, but I think he would have won with a clear run. I think everyone universally agreed to that. And he's done nothing wrong so far this season. He won well enough last time, and at Haydock, again, a track that probably isn't quite. It plays into his strengths of Royal Ascot, 3rd in the Wokingham, so we know he stays further. He's going to have a massive say in the outcome as well. It'd be lovely for the Queen as well, wouldn't it? If this horse finally gets his due reward. So my 2 each way bets here against the field, and I'm hoping that on the day they're somewhere near the prices they are now, even with 4 and 5 places on offer, would be Kings Lynn and Moonista.
Do you think they will be? I mean, you say you hope that they're those prices now. Do you think, given you think the market has got the top 2 far too short, would it not correct itself? Is it not worth backing them now, or would you sit tight?
Yeah, I think I'd rather go, let's say, Moonista 16s. I'd rather take 12, 14 to 1 with 5 places than take 16 with 3. And I think mathematically that makes sense. And the same with Kings Lynn, really. I'd rather bet the extra 2 places on the day, because there's bound to be 5 places about. There always is. Always some firms that will offer crazy value. whether he can get on or not is a different ball game. But it'll be there it'll be there if you have got that luxury. But yeah, I'd rather go 10 and 12 to 1 on the day with the 4 and 5 places than what they are now. But like I say, each man to themselves. If you listen to the podcast now, you want to get the prices, they're there for you to take.
It'd be a good time for Jack to have his first UK winner as well. But as Andy says, he's a promising trainer. I know him quite well, and he's building his operation. He's had a very, very good season so far, and she's just so reliable as well. She just never lets you down, that horse, as long as she gets her conditions. And I think she's going to run a big race.
Double one there for Muniesta, as we say, 16 to 1 with 365 Hills and Coral as it stands. All firms currently 5th to 3, but as Andy says, sure to be more places on offer on Tuesday. Check the oddschecker app and you'll see there who is sticking their neck out and giving you 4, maybe 5 places, maybe even 6. Who knows? Depends on the field size. On then to the St James Palace Stakes, and Coroebus is 2-1. Pretty sure the Baaeed Coroebus double will be fairly popular with some on the day on Tuesday. My Prospero 9 to 2, Maljoom 8 to 1, the Mighty Ulysses 20 to 1, New Energy 20 to 1, 25 to 1 bar those. Johnny, I came to you first last time to ask about 2 horses that we haven't seen too much of, so I'll give you first run here again. And Coroebus, we mentioned maybe a procession for Baaeed in the first. Is there any? Can you pick any holes in the 2-1 here on Coroebus going and winning the St James's Palace Stakes?
He wouldn't be for me. I'm again interested here what Andy meant of the Guineas, but I just didn't think it was a vintage Guineas. I mean, Luxembourg is clearly a 1.5 mile horse. So much went wrong, and he possibly could have run the race. We saw a native trail at the Curragh. I wasn't impressed at all with him, obviously. Like when he won at the Curragh, New Energy, who's likely reopposing or taking on the others here, he was a big price. He was fairly exposed, finished second. Obviously the second favourite, Buckaroo, didn't perform at all, and he was still struggling to win. So I'm not sure at all about the class of these horses. I'm interested here. Aidan O'Brien has 2 runners, or 2 potential runners in this race. One of them, the Acropolis, I presume he's not going to run. He disappointed in France, and he's a lot on anyway. But this Acal is very interesting. If you look, he clashed with Coroebus last year at Newmarket. He missed the break. He ran quite green, but he stayed at it for pressure. He didn't finish the season running very well, and that was on bad ground. But he's a Galileo horse. He was actually relatively precocious at 2. Shamie Heffernan spoke very highly of him after he won his maiden, and he doesn't have that much to find. If he has made a bit of progress, and I'm not saying for certain he's going to run here, but I imagine if Aidan won something, this will be the horse. And I think he's 33 to 1. If he could close the gap in Coroebus, who to me has beaten a moderate bunch of classic horses, I think he's totally come in under the radar because he hasn't been seen obviously since his 2-year-old days. For me, he's very interesting each way.
Yeah, Ical 33 to 1 across the board. Andy, we heard Johnny there saying that he's not so sure about the Guineas form. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I'll go along with that. Certainly based on time figures. Anyway, it was disappointingly low, considering visually it looked to be a reasonably well-run race. I think it only worked out about an 93 and 94, which is good, but it's nothing, that would set my pulses racing. The very good ones would be doing 100s, 101s, 102s. Plus the fact that Native Trail was probably the moral winner of the race. He got drawn on the wrong side. I think he was the best horse on the day. But Coroebus had the luxury of running on the faster strip down the middle. He was a good winner on the day, Coroebus. But yeah, there's just something about the Guineas I'm not absolutely totally convinced by. More to the point that the 4 times that Coroebus has run, they've all been at Newmarket, either on the July track or the Rowley Mile. So he's yet to go round a bend, which is a little bit of a concern as well if you're thinking of taking 2-1 or 2 to 5. I think William Haggas has got the key to this race. He's got 2 very, very special talents here. I think Maljoom is the most talented of the 2. I'm not sure whether he's going to run. Looking at the Betfair markets this morning, there's nothing on the right-hand side. He's at the sort of 16 to 1, which suggests to me that perhaps Connections are just going to run the 1 and leave the other one at home. It's a real shame if he doesn't run Maljoom, because I think Maljoom, like I say, is an extreme talent. The day when he won at Kempton on the all-weather, we got him doing an unbelievable time figure. It was almost like, what the hell's this? And then he went to Germany. I was having to back him over in the UK, but of course he went to Germany and he won the German Derby, but the German 2000 Guineas again in unbelievable fashion. If you got a chance to watch that video back on YouTube, you wouldn't believe he managed to win from where he was. He missed the break by about 5 lengths, and he still had loads to do, like 2 out. And then he showed him an amazing turn of foot to get up, win going away. I personally, like I say, I think he's the better of the 2, but if he doesn't run, then my Prospero is going to be more than adequate substitute. I mean, he was good when he won at Sandown. Again, time figure wise, it was a very, very good effort. And the winner of that Heron Stakes has got a really good record in the St James's Palace. I think John Gosden's won it twice before with similar types of run at Sandown prior to coming in here. And when you run over a stiff mile like Sandown, it's on the collar for the last 3.5 furlongs. You've got something that really does get his head down and go up the hill. So I'd sooner be with Prospero, stroke Maldoom. If they both run, I'll back them both. But if one of them just runs on its own, then given the way they're likely to bet, the representative of William Haggis, let's say, will be the all-time each way bet for nothing.
Maldoom currently 8-1 with Sky Bet Hills and Coral. My Prospero 9-2 with both. And again, Andy, would you suggest waiting until the day and just backing whoever turns up rather than fiddling around now?
I think so. Yeah, it's too much of a risk. Like I say, with that slight drift this morning about Maldoom, the alarm bells are ringing for me with that one. I did actually try to get a little bit out of one of the stable representatives yesterday, and he was a little bit unsure, a little bit guarded, let's say. So
he knows you.
Yeah, he didn't want to say too much just in case. Yeah, so I'd rather wait for the day. But yeah, needless to say, I won't be back in the favourite. I'll be back in one of the William Haggis horses each way, or both if they run.
My Prospero, 9-2, Maldoom 8-1 there. Both guys looking to take on Coroebus in the St James Palace Stakes with a couple of each way bets against the odds-on favourite. We'll move on now to the Ascot Stakes in a very interesting renewal. This is Bring on the Night, 5-1 favourite ahead of Pied Piper, 7-1. No, this isn't a Cheltenham preview. Arcadian Sunrise, 9-1. Coltrane, 10-1. Goshen, 10-1. A Horse with No Name, 10-1. Marshall Plan, 10-1. 16-1. Bar those. And Andy, I mean, how do you pick apart this? Because you're basically talking about horses we've seen racing in high class national hunt races, running off a mark that was from our basically archived form. You've got Bring on the Night running off a mark of 93 after a run over in France for Andre Fabre. You've got Pied Piper running off his flat mark. Goshen as well. What is it, 87? Is there one that you think from that group is best set to go well here, or are you looking to take on one of the the less flashy names from that sphere?
Well, it's pretty clear to me anyway. It's certainly in the last sort of decade or so, or even further back than that you only want to look at national hunt trainers to win this race. The flat trainers must be sick of the sight of the Raiders. I mean, William Mullins has won it twice. He probably was unlucky not to win it last year, wasn't he? With MC Muldoon, who got traffic problems, and that's the problem when you've got 20-odd runners on the round track where they don't go much of a gallop and then they basically sprint off the home turn. Trying to find your way through is a little bit problematical. Bring on the Night, he's an interesting runner. I'm not absolutely convinced looking at him as if he's guaranteed to stay the 2.5 miles. He faded last time out over 2 miles at Punchestown, and you could look at it both ways with his run at Cheltenham. You could say, he finished 4th of 9 beyond Constitution Hill, but he actually finished last of 5, beaten 50-odd lengths. Because 4 of them didn't complete, and he only beat the ambulance home. So, and I just don't see him as an out-and-out. So I actually think the other race would suit him better. He's entered up in the Copper Horse over mile 6. I think that's more of his bag. But Ryan Moore's jocked up to run here, and you'd have to respect Willie Mullins. It's his only run. He could have run numerous horses from that yard, I suspect.
Well, I was going to say, do you think because because of his reputation in this race specifically, is that why we're seeing Bring on the Night top of the market rather than necessarily the the form of his national hunt?
I mean, I don't think he's a Thomas Hobson or an MC Muldoon. Certainly, what I could see, he hasn't hit the line hard yet. He hasn't come home and thought, oh God, look at that horse. He's an absolute guaranteed stay. He's actually gone the other way every time he's faded. So, like I say, unless we see a totally different horse on the flat, he's a hard one to get in love with at the price. So we'd have to respect, like I say, all the other national hunt horses in the race. The market probably has got that factored into their prices. Pied Piper, very interesting run, as we know, useful on the flat, ran well in all the good grade ones, and off his mark, he's obviously going to be dangerous for Gordon Elliott. And Gordon Elliott has won one of these races before. I think he won the Queen Alexandra, didn't he, a few years back with one. I can't quite remember its name now, but he definitely knows what it takes. But the one I quite like here is Nicky Henderson's Veiled, I think, was his last winner, Nicky Henderson, back in 2011. And he's got a horse with no name here who's won both her 2 starts on the flat so far this season. First time up at Newbury, basically, doing what lenient handicap marks suggested she would. She got bumped up quite considerably, went to York, and then she beat 2 York specialists very, very comfortably. I was just a bit concerned that day whether she'd handle the Naysmar, but boy, oh boy, did she turn it on in a huge way. The time figure was very good. Her back end sectionals were good, and she wasn't even fully extended. So with Buick booked already, she just needs a really good draw on the day to be a factor. So I'd be with a horse with no name. Horse with no name. Yeah.
A horse with no name. Best price 10-1 as it stands at the moment. Johnny.
I really like Baaeed in this. I was talking to Joseph O'Brien what race he's going to run in, because he's a couple of options. He could run in the mile and 6 race later on. As Andy says, I mean, the stamina for these horses is just none of them is bred for 2.5 miles in the first place. Then you're guessing, are they going to go that 2.5 miles? Even the hurdlers, Pipe for me, the way he races in his races, I'm not even sure he's going to get 2.5 miles. And I think most trainers that run horses here aren't sure about that, and you just have to take the chance. If you look at the run that he had Baaeed last year in the Queen's Vase, that was over 1 mile and 6. All he did was stayed on really well, and he's, to me, a horse that will definitely stay 2 miles, and I think he'll stay a bit further. He was a bit disappointed at the Coroebus the last day. They said there was a ground issue. He was fine on good firm ground here last year, and for me, he's one of the horses that, to me, will improve for this sort of trip. And I'm not sure about Bring On the Night in terms of stamina. For me, I'd have serious question marks about him, and even Pied Piper as well. Will he get 2.5 miles? Like, to me, he looks an out and out 2 mile hurdler really in his novice hurdling days. And what does that mean in terms of stepping up in trip here? So I think it's an intriguing race. As I said, Joseph, he has other options that I hope he'd run in that mile and 6 race to close the card that I'll mention shortly. But I hope Baaeed runs here. He's probably going to be top weight. But for me, he will stay. And on that form last year in the Queen's Vase, he's really, really interesting. I think he's around 20-1.
Yep, he is. I think you're right, about 20-1. He is possibly a bit bigger. He's disappeared. 20-1 best price. You're right. Yeah, 20-1 with Paddy Power and Betfair Sportsbook there for Baaeed. Do we mention Goshen? Do we bother, Johnny? I mean, there's still memories. There's no doubting the obvious ability is there to make a mockery of that mark, but is it is, and there is some Ascot form from back in the flat days as well. But is it time to move on?
Yeah, it'd be great to see. At least he's going the right way anyway, in terms of he's going left-handed, and he's going right-handed even, and he'll be able to hopefully quit himself well. The owner's had a good time, but of course, this has been well mentioned in terms of some moderate flat races. But he adds to the mix.
He said he was as surprised as anyone else, Johnny. What do you mean?
I mean, I don't think people are doing odds compiling to put in a horse like that by Churchill at 22-1 in a 7-horse race, but there we are. I would have been happy to be on at any price, but Goshen always adds to the drama, if nothing else. Talent-wise, he could go well. At least he's going right-handed, but not for me.
He's very much ground related nowadays for me, Goshen. I mean, all his best form at Wincanton and Ascot in the middle of winter has been on soft or heavy ground, and he's well under par when he's been on good ground. And we're going to think it's going to be good or in good to firming places. Looking at it on Tuesday. Yeah,
absolutely. Goshen 10-1. One to swerve maybe unless we see some rain. Last 2 races on the day, we've got the Wolferton followed by the Copper Horse Stakes. We'll do the Wolferton now, and Adayeb is the 4-1 favourite ahead of Mohafeth at 6-1. Shining Blue 9-1. Cadillac 10-1. Juan Alcano 12-1. Foxtails 12-1 with Raise You and Majestic Dawn as well. Plenty more in there too. But Andy, I know you've got a strong fancy in the Wolferton.
Yeah, I have. I've got a sneaky one at a big price. The ratings suggest that he hasn't got much of a chance. But I'm a big fan of Johnny Murtaugh's Mashore, who really sprung to prominence, certainly to me anyway, when he won at the Cora last time out. It was a handicap, very competitive handicap, as all those Cora races are. But he won it with so much panache, and his time figure was incredibly good that I've got to get with him regardless of how the assessor has judged him. I just think there's so much more to come with this lad, and I've got a huge amount of time for Johnny Murtaugh as well, particularly when he brings one over here, as we saw with Create Belief last year, who won the Good Fillies Mile handicap in devastating fashion. If he thinks he's got one with a chance, he doesn't waste many bullets. And it's the only race he can run in as well, because I don't think there's a 1.25 mile handicap for the sort of older horses. So he's got to come here now. I think the conditions of this race have changed in the last few years to make it now a listed race. And I certainly think he's up to that standard. Obviously, there's other horses dropping down from Group 2s and Group 3s into this level, such as Baaeed, that will obviously get all the headlines, and the bookmakers have been alert to that with the way they've priced or structured the price of this race. But I do think Mashore is going to be not a million miles off this lot, and his current price of 25 to 1, certainly for me anyway, is way too big. He's basically been priced up the fact that he's a 99 rated horse, when quite clearly he's much better than that. I think he's at least 110 horse.
Mashore 25 to 1, Sky Bet, Bet Victor, Boyle Sports, and a couple of others as well. The one for Andy. Johnny, the eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed that you've actually changed location for the Wolferton. You love it so much. So give us your give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by Razio here. I think he's really interesting over 1.2 miles. They've stepped him up to 1.5 miles the last couple of runs, and the way he travelled at Coroebus the last day. I'll mention this race as well later on, because I think the runner-up is a very likely racehorse at Joseph's. It could be going places as well. But he absolutely travelled all over them, and even though he's a 6-year-old now and he's been around a bit, he looks better than ever. He absolutely bolted up at the end of the season as well. And for me, he's just enjoyed stepping up and trip. But I only going back to 1.2 miles would be a major-ish for him. He's already rated 110 now, which doesn't give him a massive amount to find with Baaeed. And I think he's absolutely fascinating each way here. Joseph has a lot of strong runners this week, and I think he's right up there with them.
Raise there, a fascinating one. 12 to 1, best price with Paddy's and Betfair Sportsbook for Johnny in the penultimate race on Tuesday. On to the final race on the card. A couple of horses we've just spoken about entered up here, but unlikely to run in the Copper Horse. But Cleveland is a 6 to 1 favourite ahead of those aforementioned Bring on the Night and Pied Piper at 12 to 1. Postuleo also 12 to 1 with Trawlerman. Candleford 14s, Rajinsky 14s with Micromanage and Contact, Spirit Mixer, Juan de Montalban, and all 14 to 1, 16 to 1 bar those. Johnny, any fancies in the lucky last and on day one at Ascot?
Well, yeah, I mean, Cleveland is obviously interesting. He's obviously gone up a little bit. I thought he sort of had the run of the race at Chester. This might be a little bit tougher, as I mentioned, but no, he could run here. I hope he goes in the 2.5 mile race, because I think Joseph O'Brien has a really interesting team here. And I mentioned that race that Okita Sushi ran in at the Coroebus the last day. He was only having his third start. For him to run as well as he did behind Razio on that occasion was really encouraging. Galileo horse was well fancied first time out when he won at Fairy House. He then ran a nice race at Leopardstown. I think this horse is really, really interesting. He's rated 104. There's surely more there. He's only had 3 starts. You'd imagine he'd even come on from the Coroebus as well. Did everything bar beat the winner and beat a good horse in third. Fascinating runner for me, and I hope this will be a good day for Joseph O'Brien. I think this horse is a knocking each way bet.
Knocking each way bets there for Johnny. Andy, how do you see it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there's only maximum 16 runners for this race because of where the stalls are, which is a little bit of a shame, because it means that several of the ones that I quite like might not get in, particularly a horse called Kemharn, who won very well at Newmarket last time out, but he's number 48 in the list. He's got absolutely no chance. He'd almost need this race to be split up to get in. I think Juan de Montalban's an interesting runner. Kevin Philippart de Foy's had a fantastic season. He's really come of age this year. And he was good over 1.5 miles here at the last meeting 30 odd days ago, when he travelled really well in a 1.5 mile race, got the race won very easily over 2 out, had loads in the tank as he hit the line. It looks a natural progression for him to step up to 1.6 miles rather than stay in his lane over 1.5 miles, because I think the probably 1.5 mile race later on in the week, as it always is viciously competitive. This one probably not so much. Certainly give Call in the Wild a mention as well. He's a C&D when he likes it here at Ascot. He actually stays 2.5 miles, but he's also got plenty of form over 1.5 miles. He hasn't probably got the speed for 1.5 miles. So 1.6 miles, back in handicap company, having run quite well in the Group 3 last time out. I think he'll go okay. And he's sure to get in. He's number 6 on the card. So I'm probably going to stick with a couple at least. If you're listening to this podcast, are more likely to run, because, like I said, the ones that I've got my eye on are probably too far down. So I'll stick up Call in the Wild and Juan de Montalban.
Juan de Montalban 14 to 1. Can't find.
Call in the Wind, sorry, not Call
in the Wind. Yeah, Calling in the Wind.
Wild.
16 to 1, and Okita Sushi, the one for Johnny there, 20 to 1. So a few there at big prices. Before we come to a close on this day one Tuesday preview. Just going to have a quick look at the top jockey and top trainer prices here. Hills have prices out for both, and for top trainer we've got Charlie Appleby 2-1 favourite ahead of Aidan O'Brien 11-4, William Haggis 3-1, John and Thady Gosden 5-1, Andrew Balding, who came close to winning last year, just pipped by John Gosden, is 14-1, Sir Michael Stout 20-1, Charlie Mark Johnson 33s, Roger Varian 33s, Richard Hannon 33s, Wesley Ward 100-1. Andy, any of those catch your eye?
I think William Haggis is probably a little bit too short. He's obviously got Baaeed, which is going to get him off to a great start. So bookmakers are not going to give you any fancy odds about him having a few shorties, which look as though that they're good. But the problem with William Haggis is he's got no 2-year-olds at the meeting. I don't think he's run a 2-year-old yet. So the likes of Godolphin, particularly Aidan O'Brien, are going to pick points up on him all the way through. I mean, Aidan O'Brien's got statuary. He'll have the favourite in the Chesham, either Alfred Munnins or the horse that was unlucky at the Curragh. And then you chuck in the likes of Little Brown Bear, the Antarctic, Blackbeard. He could pick up against a couple against the head there. And then you look at the strength in depth he's going to have in the handicaps as well. The Queen's Vase. He's going to have the favourite in the Gold Cup. Cripsios, who under fast conditions, I think he's the new kid on the block. So I think I'd probably rather back Aidan O'Brien stroke Ryan Moore there. I think if you do one or the other, then I don't think you'd be too far on. And of course, Ryan Moore is just riding with a huge amount of confidence as well. So what price is Ryan Moore to be top jockey?
So Moore's 13-8 top jock. Buick 5-2, Frankie Dettori 3-1, Jim Crowley 6-1, James Doyle and Tom Marquand both 16-1, Holly Doyle 20s, and McDonald 25s.
Yeah, on balance, I think Ryan Moore's the right favourite.
Johnny, how do you see these two markets, top jock and top trainer?
This is a market now I wouldn't have been heavily involved in, but I do think Aidan, with his 2-year-olds, with the handicap options that he will have, and his 2-year-olds been in such good form, he's able, as Andy said, to spread his horse around a little bit as well in terms of going for the right targets. So if he's 11-4, I'd probably go for Aidan, and not a bad interest bet to have in the week as well.
11-4, Aidan O'Brien, popular selection for both the guys there in the top trainer market as well. That brings our day one preview to a close. We're about to record day 2 and day 3 as well, so do check those out. Do subscribe to the oddschecker YouTube channel, where you can find all of our preview content and plenty more feature content as well, or you can find all of these previews on any podcast platform as well. Thank you very much to both Johnny and to Andy. Make sure you download the oddschecker app so you can get Andy's tips straight to the app throughout the racing season, but also during Ascot as well. Must read, even if just to get his thoughts ahead of every day's racing too. But you can also find the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, and best place terms as well. Those place terms are going to be important all week. To do enjoy the first day's racing at Royal Ascot, do check out our other previews as well. And most importantly, please do always ensure that you're gambling responsibly.